Oh, there it is. Okay.
Oh, man.
Hey, Andre, we're live.
Hey, Tara, are we?
We are. Sorry, my bad that we're late. I was getting ready and I wasn't watching the time as closely as I would have liked to. So
Fair enough. And me, I'm left to my own devices here in Montreal. We are in different locations again today, but it's interesting because I can barely log on. As you know, I have this IT disbelief about how I am with it. And not only am I trying to log on remotely, I've got two other devices hindering or helping me. So it's a bit of a shit show, but it's fun. Maybe we're not so great at the technology part, but we do know what we're talking about otherwise, right?
yes.
Okay.
Yes. Well, the good thing is we are somehow able to come here live every Monday at 11 a.m. Eastern. So if you can hear us, please say hello in the comments and give us a hi and let us, or thumbs up or something to let you know you can hear us. You can even share where you're joining us from, because we do have people from all over the world in this group. So it's always awesome to see where people are joining us from and what time it is. And also, if you're watching the replay, put hashtag replay so we know it, that you've watched it. So anyways.
Puis aussi, on vous dit bonjour tout le monde en français, puis bienvenue, et on est content que vous êtes ici pour essayer de parler en français un jour.
Are you going to speak French today?
Yeah, I can barely say what I did already in that, so I need practice. Help me. I am a francophone who's wanting to learn how to speak French.
Yes, so if you're in Montreal, say hello to Andre. He's there for now by himself for another week or so. And I'm here in Toronto. So for those of you who are, let's jump in because we have 8 people watching. I'm sure they're anxious to hear what we have to talk about. So I'm Tara. I'm a relationship and awesomeness coach.
Hi, Tara. And I'm Andre. I'm a sex-positive psychotherapist.
Yeah, and I think it's important to stop there for a second because we were just talking about that today, how we are a bit of a unique combination of things.
Yeah, in some ways we really are, right? So I have a formal therapeutic background where I was trained to be a psychotherapist, and you come at it, I think, a little bit more organically, a bit more naturally, and you are, in essence, a coach, a relationship coach. And I've seen your work firsthand, how you've helped coach me in this relationship as well. And I say that sincerely. It sounds rather glib, but when we first started dating, I alerted you to the idea that you should not fall in love with me, that I would kill you off because I was clearly attached to my not-attachment theory, right? So I was so afraid that if I should become attached to somebody, it would not be sustainable. So I would either find a way to kill you off or be killed off by you. And you showed me that I could have safe attachment, that I could have a secure haven from which to not only be in a relationship with you, but also then eventually be in a polyamorous relationship.
Yeah.
You helped me with that quite a bit.
Oh, well, thank you. Yes, I love working on attachment stuff. And actually in our program this week, that's the module we're teaching this week is on building secure attachments. So I'm super excited to share that with the people that are in our program. So, but for those of you who are watching and who are new, we come here live every week at this time and talk about subjects around polyamory, communication, attachment, jealousy, security, and everything that we've learned from our journey over the last 5.5 years being non-monogamous and also working with people who have been. So we started a conversation last week about transitioning into different ways of doing non-monogamy and maintaining security in your relationship at the same time, because this is something we found out that was a common thing that people in our group and that we met in person were struggling with.
Yeah, very often it comes up, right? We start talking to people and then they let us know that they have this pain point, that there's this issue, this gap, and they're not quite sure how to remedy it, how to address that, how to bring it up in conversation.
Yeah, I love this comment from one of our viewers on YouTube today. Love can be expansive if people can communicate. I always say poly is like the new taboo person to be. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's so interesting, right? I was speaking to somebody the other day that I play hockey with, and I let it be known that we were doing our talk on polyamory at Toronto's Oasis Club. And we started talking about polyamory, and they're not really into it yet. They're kind of dipping their toe in there. But one of the things I said to them, which often comes up, which we come to realize is being polyamorous, being in an open relationship is somewhat about the sex, but it's so much more about communication and relationship styles, right? About feeling secure or unfortunately not feeling secure enough.
Yeah, I was thinking the other day, I was like, I should create a T-shirt and that we would do it, that people would want to wear, that says like, I'm polyamorous, and then something in the back saying, and I have a master's in communication or something like that.
Yeah, to do it well, right?
Let's talk about everything, as we always say. That's what you say. Let's talk about everything.
I'm polyamorous. Let's talk. Yeah, that sounds sexy.
Actually, that's kind of funny. Okay,
Yeah.
so I'd love to know from people.
Hang on, Tara, hang on. I want to stress the importance of why communication is so important. So
Okay.
the person I was speaking to, they were telling me that they're in a 8-year relationship and that they're wanting to open up the relationship, which is understandable. That's fine. But that their partner was not so inclined, that they were feeling kind of jealous. They felt insecure about it. They felt as though maybe they weren't enough, or whatever the reasons were. They were not yet having the conversation.
Yeah.
And the reason why polyamory is so important, communication is so important in polyamory, in E&M, in doing these things, is because we can only really go forward in it when we are feeling secure and when our partner feels secure, right? So I can kind of coerce you, I can kind of force you, I can impress you, I can motivate you, I can manipulate you to do these little things, and we can go out and have some fun. But then if you're not really feeling secure, you might feel as though you're resenting of it. You're not feeling as though you're giving yourself 100% in it. You may not feel secure enough. When we have talked about all these things, when we've created a foundation of love and trust and open communication, then we feel secure. And when we feel secure, then we can go out knowing that it is good and okay, and come back and feeling as though that is also good and okay. So it really, really, really starts with communication.
It does, and that's part of the framework of what we work with people on. The communication is the foundation. It's actually the first module of our program, and that's the thing that you need to start with. But there's so many more aspects of it.
Well, there's 7 other components to our 8-step program.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But it's a big part, and it's something that people practice when they work with us the entire time that we're together, so that by the end of our time together, you can carry on and do this on your own, and you stop having the same conversation over and over again. Like I don't know how many people have told you this, Andre, but I think the most common thing I hear from people is that it feels like they're having the same conversation over and over again and not getting to the next thing. It's a huge problem. And then, like you said, people build up resentments, and it just feels like you can't get anywhere, or they feel like they have to do something, otherwise they're going to lose their partner, or, and that's why people might get into the situation of wanting to transition, or feeling like they need to transition their relationship into something different than it is, when they're not ready.
But you're absolutely right about the communication aspect, right? Because going back to this other person, they were telling me that they often have that same kind of communication. They want to get their message across to the person. They want to appeal to their partner, and yet they end up having the same kind of circle of argument conversation. And yet they themselves, in a breath before that, had mentioned what a great communicator they are. And that they are. And maybe their partner also thinks that they're wonderful communicators. But are they simply doing the same thing over and over again, hoping to get different results, when in fact they're not? So maybe we are good communicators, but are we good enough communicators? Are we able to listen the way we're supposed to? What is it in our communication style, our messaging, that's not getting through, and how can we move that needle?
Yeah. And I think what also happens too, and this, I mean, I'm sure you've heard this as well, is that people go, okay, I've had the conversation. They have the conversation. They feel like they're like, okay, yeah, I think I'm okay right now. And then it happens again. And these, like, one of my clients was talking about this couple I worked with, that they had these jars of resentment that were sitting on the shelf just waiting to come out. So it feels, you might be feeling okay in that moment, but you might not have actually solved the problem, because you've then just put it in a jar and it's on the shelf. You feel okay right now, but you're going to pull it back down as soon as the next thing comes that has you feeling insecure, or not good about something.
Right. And what that tells me then is that we've not really addressed the origins of these issues, because if we had, they wouldn't necessarily be needed to go back into these jars, right? Once they've been fully processed and exercised, once they have reached a new perspective, then they are done with. We needn't revisit them constantly. So if it feels as though it's this horrendous task that it is going to have to be revisited ad nauseum over and over again, that's simply not the case. So I will refer back to my own experience. when I first started with this, I had a higher level of jealousy because my attachment style had never been addressed. Once we were able to work through that and satisfy it, now jealousy is a non-issue. It's not to say that it never comes up, but I am much different with my relationship towards it and how it might affect me. But that all comes because of the work that we've done together. We were able to have progressive communication. We said the next thing about it because we were able to do all the work that's in our program.
Yeah. And that's not to say it's always perfect, right? You and I have our moments too. And so do the people we work with. But what I love is that we can recognize it when it's happening. Like it even happened this morning. And you like said to me, you said, Tara, I'm not the enemy, and I was like, yeah, I'm feeling really anxious and overwhelmed. And I'm like, I think I need to take a bath and I needed to eat, and recognizing when I'm in halt, hungry, angry, lonely, tired, or anxious. I think we need to add, it needs to be halta. Anyways.
If that works for you, sure.
Yeah. And so then you can go, okay, yep, I'm recognizing this in myself. Now I can do the next thing. I love that this person from YouTube is saying that it's beyond difficult to be open and honest, and that things might be in a jar. That sounds like that resonates.
Yeah, I wonder to that comment specifically, what makes it difficult to make that announcement? And it makes me think how sometimes I might want to put my position, my thought, my feeling, my desires across, but then I might also have some consideration of, well, how is it going to land? Is it going to make you feel a certain way? And now, do I prevent myself? Am I essentially future forecasting? Well, she's going to feel this way. She's going to feel that. I'm automatically speaking for you, when in fact, I've never even opened the jar to talk to you about it. Or maybe I have in the past and you felt one way, but am I going to open the jar with a new perspective, or is it simply the same old, same old?
Exactly. Someone's asking us to define halta. So it's hungry, angry, lonely, tired, and then I would add on to that anxious.
Yeah, I think the anxiety might be a product of that, but maybe we do, when we feel anxious, it is alerting us to the halta. But halta is an acronym that I first heard of, and I think many people, in 12-step programs of recovery. So that we're trying our best, we're trying to suit up and show up, be present, and yet there may be kind of outside forces that are affecting our mood. It goes back to that very successful chocolate bar campaign where they showed this guy as the Hulk because he was hungry, and then he's given the chocolate bar and he returns back to where he is. So these outside influencers may definitely influence how we are going to be, so we are mindful of them. But that's also a good segue into how, when we have these conversations, how when we work in our program, we become mindful of the situation, not only of our own thoughts and feelings, but how it might land with the other people, and then going beyond that.
Yeah, and that's the foundation of the attunement communication, right? And being aware of turf, tone, and timing, and then using the attunement communication process to work through an issue or something that's come up. Doesn't even have to be an issue. It could be something good that you want to talk about too, right? It's the same process, but having this system in place, this process, and understanding how it works and practicing it so that you can feel like you are understood and heard, and that the person who you're speaking with is also understanding that. And, it allows you to get to that next step rather than storing those things in a jar and pulling them out again next time. So,
you touch on something that seems rather simple and maybe overlooked at times, but is very important. And that is reminding ourselves and each other about the good, right? So maybe we aren't the best communicators yet, but we're both willing to show up and talk about it. There are things that we might be doing already that maybe we need to remind ourselves, remind each other of these things to show that we have the interest at heart.
Well, sorry?
Go on, please.
No, I was just going to say, well, I think some people think like if they're nesting, for example, with their partner and they're having issues, they're like, well, we talk all the time, but you may not have like a real, like it may be talking about the day-to-day things rather than talking about the things that are really important, that you really need to talk about. And then that can, then you have all those lingering things going on, right?
Yeah. And I think, my telling you that I was not the enemy might be part of that, right? I'm wanting to alert you that there are a lot of good things that we have, and that we do come up on occasion with some adversity, but we are able to go at it and find ways to create resolution, find ways to explore that.
Okay. Yeah. All right, we kind of jumped off on a big tangent
Sure
there, but
did.
it is part of what we are talking about today, which is transitioning into different forms of non-monogamy while maintaining security. And I think today we wanted to, so before we go continue on, I would love to know in the comments if anybody who's watching now or live or in the replay are experiencing a transition. So either into some form of non-monogamy, or you're already at one spot and then you're moving to another area.
Mhm.
So I just wanted to make a quick, while people are doing that, just a quick announcement too, that if you want to be notified of when we're coming live or where to find the replay, you might want to sign up with our little friend, Polly, our chat bot assistant, that they'll send you a message a week, well, 2 messages, one letting you know when we're going to go live and where to get the link. And then if we have a resource or something we want to share with you after, they'll share that with you a couple of hours after a live so that you can, it's easier to find things, because I think people find, and we'll drop the link after the broadcast, because sometimes like things get buried in our feeds or on the page and that sort of thing. So it's nice to get a notification. So last week we talked about the 5 steps you can take, and we want, to make these transitions a little bit smoother, and we'll be sharing those again. But I think what we wanted to talk about today and where we had started was like, what's behind why this is so difficult for you? Because I think people might be in the midst of it and they're like, this is crazy. Like, why is this happening to me? So some of the situations that, we see is like people have been, for example, they may have started like we did, like having experiences together, going to clubs, going to parties and that sort of thing. So you're with your partner and experiencing things at the same time. It's much easier to check in, although some people don't always do that. Like set up things so you know how that sort of situation is going to work. And you're playing together, but in the end, that you're going to be returning home back to your regular life. So it might be an occasional thing, that's happening. But then I think what happens commonly, and what happens to us, and I was going to show this little diagram here, which many may recognize as the diagram that we use to kind of show the different styles of non-monogamy, all the way from monogamish to relationship anarchy, and where they fit in terms of how sexually exclusive you are and how emotionally exclusive you are. So say, for example, like the example I was giving, that you start at monogamy and you might move towards monogamish maybe, and then swinging. And then you may either go over to open relationship, or you may go all the way over the other side to polyamory. And it's like a big jump going over to down from monogamish into swinging and then into polyamory.
Sure. Looking at that model, Tara, it reminds me so much of what we often refer to as the relationship escalator, right? So monogamy, we talk about how, we're single, we start seeing each other, then we start going steady, then we get engaged, we move in, we get married, we have kids, we die, blah, blah, blah. So it's almost like a course that's already been laid out. And for many people, they do often open up their relationship in this escalator as well, right? So they start off, as we did, as being monogamous, then kind of being monogamish, and then going into some swing events, either parties or clubs or whatever. And then we might start dating individually, and then we might get to the point where we are kitchen tabled or in anarchy, where we say, well, no relationship is greater than the others. Each one has its own considerations, and voila. So it also might have a very natural or rather common progression. Yeah.
But it's different in that it's reduced levels of being exclusive in terms of your emotional and your sexuality. It becomes less so those things, rather than on the relationship escalator, the traditional monogamous relationship escalator, where you go up to like complete, fidelity, and you're with one person and you commit to one person and that's it. You know what I mean?
Yes, it's closed on both ways, sexually and emotionally, right?
Yeah. So this is the idea of opening it up. And I think this is what happens because people enjoy the sexual experiences, right? Like, and they think these are amazing, but then they meet people, as we do, that we connect with at different levels, and it brings that extra thing to your life. And, more so than just being friends. I know sometimes people are like, well, you can just have friends. You don't have to have sex with them.
They're absolutely right. You don't have to have sex with them. But my question always is, how do you imagine sex is going to somehow interfere with your relationship? So if you are open with a person, if you are good emotionally with them, doesn't matter if the other person is having sex or playing tennis with the other person. How is that going to impact you emotionally? Because while I'm not having sex with this other person, I might still have strong feelings for them. Is that going to make you feel as though you are in any way not a good enough tennis player, not a good enough friend, not a good enough lover, as opposed to feeling more secure and saying, well, I know that you can still participate in these other activities without me or with me, but we're still good because we are good, essentially, not because of the model that we subscribe to or the activities we do or don't do together.
Yeah. Well, that's the part that's hard, because sometimes people, when they make this transition, don't build that strong foundation, right?
Right.
And there's missing pieces in that. And for different people, I think the emotional side might be more threatening, or the sexual side. It just depends on the person.
And the universal part that I would say would be missing would be the elements of communication, because that will give birth to miscommunication or not talking about it at all. Whereas when we are very transparent and open about our thoughts and feelings, well, then we invite the other person to do the same with theirs, and we can find out what's going to work for us and what's not going to, as opposed to kind of just avoiding it or brushing it under the carpet and never having the dialogue about that.
Well, let's talk a bit about like why this might be a problem for some people, right? Like, I think, because we say, and people believe, like people who are non-monogamous, when they go into it, and I think most people would say is like, yeah, love can be infinite. I get that intellectually, that we can have many loves, and that's fine. But then sometimes when we're expanding into a place where we're having more partners and more emotional connections, then time comes into play. So how we spend our time, because time is finite, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, go on, please.
And it can bring up feelings of like territorialism, right? This is my time. You're taking away from my time. And they're making that, equating time to love.
Right. And that might feel threatening, right? The sexual expressions that don't involve us might make us feel as though we're going to be replaced. And again, this speaks directly to our level of secure attachment or not. Do we feel as though we have this safe haven? Do we feel as though we are secure?
Yeah. And you sort of alluded to it a bit there. That sometimes there's other aspects of our sexuality we may want to explore, right? And
yeah, for sure. I've heard from quite a few couples who are together who want to start opening up the relationship. Maybe if it's not even so much about wanting to be with other people, but even come to terms with their own sexuality. They have their own curiosities, longings, desires, and how will they be able to announce that? So you and I, for example, we get together and you present as a cis woman, I present as a cis male, and we get together. We are in this mono model, this het model. But I also have a whole nother side of me, a part of me that identifies with my so-called female energies. Where does that fit into our mono equation, our het model? Where can I announce these things while feeling secure enough to do it? But you might also, as my partner, feel secure. Where would it leave you if I want to explore something different? Are you invited? Can I go and do it alone and come back? Is that a safe haven? How do we factor that into it? And for many people, they're not so sure about their ability to manifest these things, let alone even ask for these things, how to bring it up in conversation. We show you how you can have the most difficult of conversations. And you might not necessarily get the end goal you're wanting directly, but you'll at least know that you were able to have these conversations. You'll be able to announce what you're wanting and then take it from there, find out how you get it or where it would be for you.
Yeah, and I think the thing you have to come to terms with, and you sort of feel comfortable with, and it takes time and work, is that you, like this person says, is no one person can be a super person. They can't necessarily, no one person fulfills your needs. And we know this, right? That's why we have friends and different types of people we hang out with. That's why we have hobbies. We're not repeating the exact same day over and over again, because as humans, one of the things we value is variety. And it doesn't mean that one thing has to be less than the other. It's just different. But coming to terms that with the fact that you don't have to be everything for someone.
And yet, very often the model that we are taught through, say, organized religion is that we would choose one person for the rest of eternity, forsaking all others. And it almost sounds like a fairy tale at that point, right? Because who could ever be the one person that's going to be everything for all of us? And if we were to go out and have a platonic friend, well, that seems reasonable enough, even though they are fulfilling an emotional part of us. And if we were wanting to go play hockey when our spouse or our friend doesn't want to play hockey, it would seem okay that we could go out and play hockey with somebody else. So we have the physical and the emotional demonstrations, but yet if it should become romantic or sexual in any way, how would that then interfere with it? I'm secure enough for you to go play hockey with somebody else. Well, you're doing physical activities. What would be specific about this other one that would be so threatening? Or could I say, well, yes, you can go do that, and I know that you come back to me because you're wanting to come back to me.
Mm-hmm.
I feel secure.
Yeah, because those connections also take time, right? Friendships take time as well. We nurture those relationships, but sometimes they're not as threatening, so it's still time. You're still loving the person, but it's like when you feel like you might be, something that you offer might be taken by somebody else, or that person might want something different. So, and I think that the interesting thing too is people people are stumped, right? Like, why is this transition so hard for me? Like I have confidence in every other aspect of my life, like my career. Like I can adapt to change. I can announce what I want, and I can believe that I can get it. And I can even lay a path from A to B. But then, we bring it into our relationship, and then all of a sudden it's a different thing. So it's how do you tap that confidence in your relationship? And, I think you hit the nail on the head with the communication and working on building secure attachment, right?
You point out something that reminds me, another component, and that is believing that we're entitled to it. So in the very beginning, this was very new to me. The idea that I would be ethically open, that I could announce that I was wanting something other than just a one-on-one relationship, it seemed foreign to me, and I was not so secure in announcing it, right? So I didn't believe that I could attract people who would be open and accepting of this idea. It seemed too fantastic. Somebody would let me go out and have a relationship with somebody else. It just was not the model that I had been brought up on. So I didn't believe that I was entitled to it. Whereas now I've come to find out, not only am I entitled to it, but if I stand securely and announce who I am, I will attract other people who have the same orientation and find out that it is perfectly human and acceptable to do that. Yes. So I can start by suspending my own judgment that this thing is not possible. I can come to realize that I am viable and these things are possible, that I could be in a loving, secure relationship, but that it also doesn't mean that it's limited to one person, one model kind of thing.
Yeah. And in fact, your partner, if you have a regular partner, like we have a strong, committed relationship, that person can actually be cheering you on and having those relationships. Like we were talking through some communications you had recently. And then you had made the comment, like, this is so cool, like that we can like talk about this, openly. And, we've gotten there over 5.5 years, right? Other people may not be there, which is also totally fine too. Like I definitely have my moments of jealousy, that. And so it's not a perfect model, but, working towards neutral and building the security in self that you can have those conversations is like amazing. That's such an amazing transition.
Yeah, I wish we would have known someone like us years ago. That could have helped sidestep a lot of the hurt and jealousies and pain that we were dealing with, having to go at it blind, not having a script to follow like we do now. I mean, we did a lot of hours of research. We did a lot of crying. We did a lot of things that were able to be kind of shortcut through. And maybe it's good that we did do this process, but I'm thankful for the people now that do have a program like ours that can sidestep a lot of this and get to the fruit of it rather than having to sit in the pits for a while.
Yeah, because I think what ends up happening to people is, I mean, there's tons of people in the group, they're listening to us now, and, you know, there's people talking about this and all over the place, and there's free resources online. We give out free resources too. We've had tons of worksheets, but it's not the same as having like a direct, you know, framework to work within over the course of 16 weeks where you can, you know, you can go through every step in the process so that by the end you have established a vision and a blueprint for what you want your life to be and a process to review it on an ongoing basis, which is what we teach people. Because I think people end up talking to friends who have really the best intentions. You know, we're struggling with something, but they may not totally understand the dynamics of being non-monogamous or your particular situation.
No, that's absolutely correct. They may have the best intentions, but they may not necessarily be trained or schooled enough. They may not have gone through all this, or they may not necessarily subscribe to this orientation. And
Yeah,
that's
or
fine.
yeah, or you just may not have someone to talk to because you're not out about this.
Right.
So, you know, and, you know, I've heard from people, and even talking to their therapist, like so many, you know, if I had $1 for every time somebody told me that they're in therapy, but their therapist is not somebody who subscribes to non-monogamy, maybe discouraging it, or the person feels like they can't bring that up. Like, you can deal with my childhood trauma and, you know, my issues with my mom or whatever, but they're afraid to even bring it up with their therapist, which is so interesting, right?
Yeah, that's really unfortunate. And maybe it's not even necessarily that the therapist is wanting to bring them back into the fold of monogamy, but it's just that they just don't know. It's interesting. I was working with somebody the other day, and they said that you know, their homosexuality, their bisexuality was, well, especially their homosexuality was much more accepted in their community, but their being polyamorous was still a frontier that is not accepted. So they were able to come out to their parents as being gay, and that was understood. Okay, they were able to work through that, but their being a polyamorous is still met with a lot of friction, to the point where when the holidays come up, they are not able to bring both of their husbands, and it makes it very difficult for them to be in that position. So then they don't go to the holidays. So their parents are okay with them being homosexual with one partner, but not with two partners. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, that's so interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, you're trying to make this transition, and the things that we talked about last week, and people can go back to the replay for that, because it was a great talk we did, was, you know, the steps you can take. So the first one was understanding, you know, why you want to make the transition, what makes that important to you at this time, or your partner.
Right.
Communication. So preparing for and having communication. Our internet or YouTube person's commenting. I love it. It's so good. Number 3 was,
Or was making a plan to get there, right?
Yes,
so
making a plan to get there.
How can we envision this together, right? So we talk about our values agreement, right? Our values relationship agreement.
Values-based agreement, yeah.
So something like that is beautiful because it is collaborative, right? So in the past, when I did non-monogamy, I was making the decision for both of us. I wasn't telling them that we were non-monogamous. I would just go out and fool around and feel terrible about it and feel bad for them. We're talking about something entirely different. We're talking about a collaborative effort where we both put forward what are the things that are important for us? Where do we have that overlap? What do we want our relationship to look like? It's a blueprint for that.
Yeah, blueprint. And yeah, I think what's interesting about that is I lost my train of thought. I was listening and then I lost my train of thought, which is good, which means I was listening.
Yeah, very good. Which is one of the things we teach, right? So, you were not listening to make your response. You were simply listening to what I was saying. And that is something that sounds rather simple. And yet, how often do we actually do it? How often do we already check out of the conversation because we're formulating our response?
Yes.
It reminds me of the couple that we were speaking about earlier. They believed themselves to be a very good communicator. They probably are for the most part, but were they really listening to what their partner was saying afterwards? And was their partner listening? And were they simply just going back and reiterating the same thing over and over again? Or were they able to bring a new perspective? Were they able to shed some light on what it is that they were wanting? Might they even been able to talk about the things that they thought were most uncomfortable, most difficult things to talk about? Once we talk about these things, once we find a way, then everything else falls into place and it gets much easier after that. This is the foundation that's necessary to get to where we want to be.
Yeah, and the talking part is the hard part, though.
Well, the initial part and learning the patterns of successful communication.
Oh yeah. Oh, for sure. Once you've learned that, then it's much easier. But I think people get stuck at, like we said at the beginning, in those conversations. So those more difficult conversations.
Right. And in our 8-step program, when we do talk about communication, we do have interesting exercise to help you really acknowledge and see at what level of communicator you really are, right? So we might ask each other to simply reiterate what the other person has said and find out from that. This is what I believe I heard you say. Am I correct there, or have I hit the mark, or am I way off? Right.
Yeah, it's so important, because people go, yes, and then if you don't do that part of it, it doesn't embed into you, and it does take practice, which is why I love doing the live training and then practicing with people on the spot, because I think it really helps them see it. And we've even done the thing where we will say, well, can I do it how you might say it differently? And people are like, oh, okay, I got that now. And I think it's really, they're like, well, I think I heard you say that, blah, blah, blah. And people are like, oh, okay. And I'm like, okay, now say it.
Yeah, it's great because we get to demonstrate it for them. It can resonate with them, and then they get a chance to practice it. And we can say their partner can say, or we can intercede for their partner and say, well, you sort of got it, but you weren't quite on point. Or, yeah, that's wonderful. And now ask your partner, and on it goes.
So that's the thing. So once you have your blueprint, then creating a process and system to review and adjust as necessary. Quarterly review, as you call it.
Well, it's also important because while we might say today that we're wanting X, Y, and R, it might not be that we're wanting X, Y, and R tomorrow.
Exactly.
So how would we know? And we're asking, we're inviting, we are employing you to say, please, let's get together and talk about these things. Is it still working for us? Is it working as well? Is it working less well? What could make it better? What would be some of the things that we might be able to do, the fine tuning of it? And then we can decide whether or not we're wanting to continue with it from there.
Yeah. And that's where things like changing the model of your relationship, how you might want to relate to each other, might come up. Because that can be a pretty big change for people and can bring on a lot of feelings around that. So it's like, why am I feeling so insecure about that? And people like really do scratch their heads, because they're like, well, I've been doing this thing for a while. It's been comfortable. So, some of the things that, the reasons I think that people come up with this is that it's something new and familiar. So there's no models around you of how it can actually work. So I think that's what's tough. And I think someone put that in the comments, is like, it's hard to find other polyamorous people that are doing it successfully, that are implementing the model that you want to have in your relationship. And in fact, I think sometimes there's some misinformation out there and some myths that people subscribe to about how it has to be, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It makes me think about jealousy and compersion, right? That is one of the biggest myths. So they think that the absence of jealousy will automatically be the mark of compersion. Just in case you've not heard compersion before, that is finding joy in your partner's having joy. Is that right? Compersion?
Oh, no. Oh, there you're back on. That was probably me then.
Yes, you're back. So compersion is the little rudimentary definition of it is the idea that we might find pleasure in our partners finding pleasure, right? Exactly. But jealousy and compersion are not necessarily the same. And there's a myth that we should work through this and never feel jealous again, and that we should only have compersion. And those two are not necessarily absolute in those ways. So we've done quite a bit of work on our own levels of jealousy, and on occasion, we might still feel jealous, but we
Yeah.
have much more successful ways of dealing with our jealousy today. I don't have to kill you off. I don't have to say, oh, that's it, I'm out of here, or any of those things. I can look at the umbrella term of jealousy, find out what the components are and how I might go beyond that. And then very often, much more often than in the past, I will arrive at this wonderful feeling of compersion. Being secure in myself can allow you to have your pleasures and say, you know what, she's having these pleasures, but if she comes back to me, it's because she wants to come back to me, and not because I have some kind of contract forbidding her to go elsewhere. It means so much. Mm.
Yeah. And I think that also, like, I love that part, but also that, there's, even when we did our talk at Oasis, it's like, can you have someone you nest with, so live with, or someone that you have a closer connection or commitment or attachment to for whatever reason, and still be ethically open or consensually open? Because there's a myth out there that you can't have a primary partner, that if you're polyamorous, everybody must be equal and all that stuff, which we know is, not true, because of, we have people in our lives that are more important for whatever reason. There always is, but it's about how you deal with, like, how you connect with all the people so that it is ethically open and people feel important, even if they're not the top importance, and that they're consenting to that situation, right?
Absolutely.
Right. So that was number one. So the reason you might be feeling insecure in the transition into non-monogamy or throughout non-monogamy, so it's new and unfamiliar, and there's no successful models around you. You might not know exactly what you want, or be afraid. You're afraid of wanting something different.
Right.
So you might be scared about the unknown in transitioning. So that whole idea of future forecasting.
Right. And then number three would be very often we see people who have self-doubt, wondering if they are enough for their partner. Is that why their partner might want to open things up? Is it somehow an indication of my being insufficient, not good enough, not fast enough, not smart enough, whatever it might be? Right. So these are some things that we will address and look at as well in our program.
Yeah. And so the last part is, even if you do know what you want, you can't see that clear pathway to get you from where you are right now to that, beautiful vision of what you want, in a way that doesn't result in endless arguments and that you've been having, and a whole lot of time spent in hurt and pain. Because I think that's what happens to people. And I hate seeing that. And sometimes it actually causes a breakup of the relationship, and that's even worse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it caused a break in relationship that was otherwise quite good and viable. Had they been able to really unpack these issues, look at them, honestly and directly, they could have most likely found resolution to them, right? So the fear might make us say, oh, the hell with this, and I'm getting out of here, which is what I would have done often in the past.
Yeah. I mean, I spoke to someone just last week. This happened for them. Their partner was I think there's some other things going on probably, but their partner basically said to them, I've waited long enough. I want to do something different. And they left them. It was like, they were like, I was just in the process of getting ready. They hadn't gotten formal help, but they were just starting to. And the person was like, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. Like, that is such especially when you've invested so much time in a relationship, you have kids, whatever it is, you know what I mean? And you know that you love the person and you love each other, but you just can't get past this hump. So yeah, so that's where we come in.
But it's interesting though, the person was saying, oh, I was getting close to doing it, but what action had they actually taken? So it's one thing to say, oh yeah, like, I'm coming on board with it, and like, yeah, we're working towards this. But what does that tell the other person? Is it simply lip service? Are we in some ways sort of kind of delaying and denying? Or are we willing to actually sit in front of a third person? Are they willing to actually go ahead and do the work necessary? What actions are they willing and able to take? What have they taken in the past? So the partner might have said, oh, yes, I've heard you say many times that we're going to work on this and that you're getting closer. Yes. But all I hear is talking about this without any actual action. And picking up that call, making that appointment is very much a demonstration of the willingness to go forward and take the necessary action.
Yeah, it's an actual action, rather than just talking about it. It's actually taking a step.
Yeah.
Some step towards action and beyond just talk, because talking is important. We told you that it's the number one thing, but it's talking combined with taking very particular steps. And I love what you said about, like, what's the demonstration, right? It might feel for the one person that you've been talking and talking and talking and you're getting nowhere, and then it builds up that resentment. Like, when are you going to be ready? We saw that happen right in front of us, when we talk to some people about it.
And we might ourselves have a sense of urgency, hoping that our partner is going to come on board, or at least be willing to talk about these ideas. But if it's only that, it might not be enough. Whereas when we see firsthand our partner's demonstration in the willingness to talk about it and the willingness to take an action, then it can really impact. Then we say, wow, this person really is invested. They're taking action. They are wanting to demonstrate, and that makes me feel seen and makes me feel important.
Yeah, that actual taking that step. I worked with a couple that had been struggling with something for 5 years, a hurt that had happened, and the actual, starting to work with me was the impetus for change. Because for the one person, it made it seem like their partner really wanted to do something about it, not just talk about it, or bury the lead, as they say. In storytelling. So, like I said, that's where we come in. So we not only have we been successful in our own relationship, I would say we're pretty successful in navigating like transitions in our own non-monogamous journey, but we've created an 8-step framework that can guide you and take you through this journey, all while maintaining security in your relationship and fostering greater intimacy that you would ever imagine. Like, don't you feel like this whole journey has brought us closer together?
Yeah, it's so amazing, that phenomena that happens, right? Because I think a lot of times many people who are outside of it would imagine, well, that's the thing that's going to break you up. And yet unfortunately, many marriages who are monogamous and closed sexually and emotionally still end up in divorce. And you're absolutely right. Since starting our relationship like this, I feel much closer to you. But a lot of that is because we communicate well and because we're ethically open and honest about it. Mm-hmm. And so what happens is we go out and we demonstrate these other things, but then we know that we can come back to each other in an emotional, secure way and feel as though we are seen, held, secure. And that changes everything.
Yeah, I mean, we've built a strong foundation before we went into action. And I think that's the part sometimes that people miss, is that foundation. And they open up or seek other things to correct a problem and then end up with a bigger problem, right? So, I mean, we have this 8-step process. What's awesome, I think, about what we do, if I might, shameless self-promotion, is, I'm just going to say it. Like, I think we're very unique in this field of supporting people navigating non-monogamy, because we have the benefit of a therapeutic approach. You're very therapeutic in the way you deal with things. So you can break down what it is that might be behind what's going on. And then we also both have that coaching experience in order to get people into actions and get them taking those steps that get them to that place where they want to be. So, yeah. So if you want to make this transition as smoothly, as painlessly as possible, we invite you to reach out and book a call with us. We'll show the little thing. It's a free call. We call it the Relationship Rescue Call. We will ensure over the 45 minutes, we really get into what has been going on in your relationship, where is the struggle coming from, and make sure you leave with the next steps that you can take. And that's steps you can take on your own or with our help. We love talking to people. We love supporting people in this journey. It's why we're here every week at 11 a.m. Eastern, because we want people to succeed. And we feel like we've found that formula to do that. And
help is a call away. Give us a call.
It's just a call away, honestly. Like, take us up on it. It's not going to hurt. And if anything, it's going to get you somewhere better than you are when you started. So
fantastic.
Yay. So that's it for today. Thanks everyone for watching, either live or in the replay. Thanks for all your comments. We will go back and answer them, and we'll make sure we drop the link to connect with Polly so you can catch us live and to book that relationship rescue call.
Awesome.
Thanks, Andre. I miss you.
I miss you too. And I'll see you soon, I hope.
Yeah. Love you.
Love you too. Bye.